Now if I tell you I love you, what does it mean if I don't care? Cupid. All right, I'm tripping. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, yo, what's up? You know what it is. It is your boy D Starks.
Starks the artist.
And you are now tuned in to the Just Different podcast, where we talk everything faith, life, and culture. That's the one. It's the one.
What's the word on the street? Which one? Wait, which one is?
But hey, Big 5-2.
52.
Big 5-2 hit the year mark, which is absolutely insane. Like, it's really crazy. Like I think our first episode, it came out, or we published it August 13th.
Yep.
2021.
That's what it was.
So around exactly this time last year. And it's crazy. I really remember everything. Like, I remember we were recording right here, and we got like this wall right here, but it had like the photos of our face or whatever.
And it was white
like the
wall.
portraits. Yeah, the portraits of our face.
Yeah.
And then we had this like black table, y'all, and it was so raggedy. Like, it didn't look bad, but like it was falling apart.
It was falling apart. Y'all didn't see it on the camera, but
I'm saying, yeah, like it was falling apart, and you could barely put the boom stand or the arm stand for the mics, because it would literally like indent the
it was flimsy. It wasn't like good quality.
It was flimsy.
Yeah, I know, it was crazy.
No, yeah, it was. I mean, it's been a ride. It's crazy. Oh yeah, and I remember what a lot of people don't know about that first episode. We weren't even supposed to publish it. Like, it wasn't even really an EP.
It was just a test run.
Yeah, like it was a test run. So like we were trying to like test the mics, make sure we knew how it worked, and like the camera that we were using, and the lights and whatever. And we were like, okay, we're just gonna sit down, we'll just have like a regular conversation for about like 30 minutes and see where it goes. And then I remember we had like clipped what we had recorded to promote the podcast a little bit before we actually record like the first episode.
What one does. Exactly.
Right. And we like posted something on TikTok and Instagram, and like it kind of like low-key like
crazy.
Yeah, went crazy a little bit, like, mini viral moment. And everybody's like, oh, where's this episode at? What's the name of this? I'm like, we have no episodes.
I was like, what episode?
So we went ahead and we just like dropped what we had recorded, like that little like test run or whatever. And so like when you go back and listen to just the intro, like you can see there's really no introduction,
and there's no outro. It literally just cuts out in the middle of the conversation.
There's no end.
Yeah, bro.
But yeah, that kind of like built the foundation of the podcast and how we wanted to do it. Just like having like genuine like real conversations.
Talking,
and that was it.
Bro.
Yeah, just talking and doing that thing.
That was an origin.
Oh, for sure. So I mean, 1 year, and it's crazy because for me personally, like, it's always a struggle to, I guess, like celebrate myself.
Right.
A lot of times. And so even like coming up on the year mark when we hit like 50 episodes and all that, I wasn't even, it took everything out of me to like make sure I'm saying like, yo, I'm proud of us.
Right.
And what we've done, what we've accomplished. And that's why I guess like right now, that's one of the things that I'm learning, God's like revealing to me, is like, yo, it's important to celebrate yourself, highlight and recognize what you're doing, because like it's not normal.
It's not.
Like what you're doing is not normal. That's for like anybody out there that has a struggle with, like, deals with that in any capacity, like whether that be like graduating high school, overcoming depression, that anxiety, mental illness, getting out of that relationship, like taking that step to improve yourself. Yo, like sometimes we can treat these things that are really like extraordinary so mundane and not give it like the recognition or attention that it needs, because it's just like, oh well, like anybody could do this. No, not everybody can do it. You know what I mean? That's why I texted Jordan when I tell you in the text.
Yeah, he was like, I'm proud of us, and then he was like, I'm proud of you and everything that we've done, and then he was like, I was just trying to work on what's the word I'm looking for? I was trying to work on celebrating. You say I was just trying to work on.
No, what else did I say? You remember?
I don't. What did you say?
I said this. What we're doing isn't normal.
Oh yeah,
we're changing the world.
He said what we're doing is not normal. Yeah,
right. It's like, and that goes for everybody. What you're doing is not normal at all. And like you taking those steps, like improve yourself and just work on who you are and your God-given purpose. Yo, that's literally changing the world, even if it starts with your own life. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so yeah, celebrate yourself.
Celebrate yourself.
And so that's one thing I'm working on. Like I think we may or may not have anything like a little like maybe like party or whatever, just some type of celebration, because like it's important to. And it's not something that it's not being conceited either or prideful or arrogant to be like, yo, like I'm proud of what I done or accomplished.
Not at all.
Right. In the Bible, it talks about how like David had to encourage himself. And so that's always important. So yeah, that's what I want to start off with up top. But so yeah, since we're basically at this 1 year mark and we're in this very celebratory season, like in this moment, that's something that we really just wanted to talk about and discuss today for this episode. Because for those who don't know, August 8, the number represents essentially like transition to new beginnings. So yeah, August is essentially like really a month of transition, and you can see that of course. Like August is usually the time. Okay, summer's ending. You're going into like your senior year. You're going into your freshman year of college, starting middle school, and or starting your new job after like college had ended or whatever that looks like. This is usually that time of transition for everybody. And so whenever we're thinking, of course, about like August, what that means to both of us, and then the 1 year mark of the podcast, I was like, it'd be a perfect time to really talk about what it looks like to navigate transition and change.
Right.
And also, we're going to be talking about a lot of like what we've learned this past year in transitioning into like doing the podcast, having a platform. So some lessons from that. But when it comes to navigating transition, there was a Facebook post that I saw from Matthew Stevenson that really described this well. And it said that grief very often is the necessary orientation for a new season. Many of you just need to embrace the fact that that season is over. Now grieve well, because if you don't, you'll have a deaf ear toward your next instructions. Grieve it all. The ideal life, the perfect assignment, the career, friends, death, losses, betrayals, mistakes, attacks, abandonment, lies, hope deferred, company, promises, roles, family structure, divorce, etc. Grieve is orientation for what God has next. Mourning introduces the morning. Grieve is the orientation for what God has next. Mourning, right? Joy comes in the morning, introduces the morning. If you don't grieve well, it will become a time thief and hard word. You aren't getting younger. A large part of numbering your days is learning when to cry and when to stop. And so that was the post, and I thought that was really powerful, because when it comes to like, you know, going into like a new level or a new season, like, because the key to that next level, which we talked about in Sinking Sand, is essentially abandoning the old one.
Right.
And that's a process that I think we all definitely like have to go through and navigate well in terms of like grieving that. Yeah, and this principle is important because we all know people who are like stuck in their glory days. Right. People that you were either friends with in high school or in a past time that always come around, and they're always talking about like the pinnacle of their life. Those are the people that were always say like peaked in high school. Right. Like, and every time you talk to them or you're around them, y'all are catching up, it's always about what had happened, what did take place, what, oh, I remember when we did this or and it's okay to like reminisce and look back, but it's something that they're stuck in. Right. It's usually attached to some type of like accolade they have had in like sports, academics, or some extracurricular activity. And me personally, I ain't gonna lie, I used to make fun of the people all the time. Like, I still do. I'm like, bro, like, why are you stuck there, bro?
You remember that game winner I had? Bro, I was 15.
We was 8 years old. I don't remember the spelling bee game. Like, and I make fun of those people until I realized that I was one of them.
Oh, that's crazy.
I was one of them because, and what I mean by that is, for me personally, whenever I did get saved, and going into like my junior year of high school, of course there was like this fire I have for God, and that honeymoon phase of just things being just like so peaceful, me being so energized and things of that nature. And after that season, going into like my senior year, I didn't adjust well because I was looking for where I was at to be the same as where I was. Like I didn't know how to, what I was trying to get back something I could never regain. Like I had already lost the season that had already passed. And so like I was chasing a feeling, a moment, a season of my life that it was that wasn't there anymore. Right. And even like, as you know, I was getting older into senior year in college, I'm like, yo, I'm still chasing that. It's like, oh man, I remember like look back and say, dang, like I wish it could be like that again. I could feel like that again. Life could look that good or that well or whatever. And like generally speaking, it's not that life won't ever get better or you're going to peak or stop at a moment of your life. It's the fact that it's just not going to look the same. It's not. And so you have to grieve an old season well and mourn that, so you can like make sure you're being very present for what you're about to go into. And so that's one thing that even I had to learn, because I was stuck in that in a way, not in terms of like, you know, the traditional like accomplishments of, oh, this is what I did or what I had, but there was like a feeling, a moment that I missed, right? That I didn't grieve, that I was still trying to get back to, that I had to like leave there so I could have room for what's next. And so when it comes to like navigating like transitioning, going into like something new and something next, you have to resolve that it won't look the same. It won't. And that's okay. And you have to adjust to whatever that's going to look like for you next.
Yeah, that grieving process is real. And I feel like the whole transition phase in general is a lot, because it's like not only are you having to grieve past seasons, but you're dealing with the uncertainty of like the future and the uneasiness that comes
true.
with that. You know what I mean? And I think because for some of us, when we walk into something new, it's kind of like everything in us is telling us to like flee from that. Like it's a lot of uneasiness, it's a lot of uncertainty, and we don't, you know what I mean? We don't want to face that. But something that I've learned and had revealed to me is that sometimes the warning isn't a call to avoid, but a call to preparation. And this is something that shows up in Acts 21:10. So there's this prophet that comes up to Paul, right? And he's like, I got this vision from the Holy Spirit. And I'm paraphrasing, right? But he's like, yo, listen up. I got this vision from the Holy Spirit. He takes Paul's belt and he ties himself up with it. And he says, if you go to Jerusalem, you're going to be bound much like this, right? And obviously everyone around Paul, they're in disarray. They're down bad. They're like, Paul, like, you can't go to Jerusalem. Like, he's saying you're going to go to jail. Like, don't go to Jerusalem. And what Paul said in response to this warning, it seemed that was given to him, he says, I am ready. That's the first three words that he responded with, is I am ready, because he understood that this warning from the Spirit that I'm getting isn't telling me to run away from it, but it's telling me to what? Get ready. It's telling me to prepare. So I think we have to kind of take on the same mindset as Paul's, that sometimes when you're receiving this uneasiness, that inclination to run away, sometimes it's not telling you to avoid it. Sometimes it's saying, hey, you're going to walk into the season. You got to make sure you're ready for it. You know what I mean? You got to make sure you're where you need to be mentally, spiritually, so to where you can handle it. You know what I mean? Because eventually what happened is Paul went to Jerusalem, and it was in God's will for him to be bound. But if he ran away from the warning and didn't prepare himself, then he would have been outside of his will. So I think we have to take just a different mindset on it and use our discernment to be able to tell, okay, is this feeling telling me to avoid, or is it telling me to just get ready to walk into? So yeah, I think you have to find that balance between grieving from the past, but also getting ready for these feeling and emotions that come with walking into the future.
Right. Whether that be like doubt, like uncertainty, like things of that nature, of like just you feeling like less than, or just even nervous or fear. Right. Honestly, the biggest thing. But I like that a lot. And that reminds me of something that, in terms of like being prepared and getting ready and taking that warning not as a sign to like step back, but to move into, is our brother Eric. He has said something to me once that was really profound. And he was talking about how he navigates basically having a platform and criticism and different comments like that, and negative comments that he may get. And something that he said is, of course, like in the Gospels, Jesus preaches and speaks a lot about persecution, particularly to the church and the body. And the fact that he always says, and whenever it's stated, even in like whether that be the Gospels or in James or different New Testament books, is that persecution will come. And it's something that is inevitable. And what Eric said is the fact that this warning or this statement that we're given in the Bible isn't for us to get frustrated at, but to prepare for. Right. And so what he meant by that is like, so whenever you see persecution come, it should be something that you're expecting. And so when it happens, like the reason that God or Jesus had told us, persecution will come, it's not for us to be frustrated or be driven by our emotions, but to get ready and be prepared for it. Exactly. Right. So I'm getting myself like solidified in my identity, who I know I am, moving myself away from like the opinions of men, feeding my identity and my character. And so I'm getting prepared and ready for when I know this persecution is going to come. And so I think that tied in like really good to what you're saying, just in terms of the warning, like different signs and different warnings and what you're getting, and even going into like new seasons. Transition is inevitable. Change is inevitable. It's something that we don't like, but it's not something to be afraid of. It's not something to allow our emotions to control us with, but for us to just prepare for. Yeah, just prepare for us. So yeah, it's just a transition in mindset of like, instead of allowing our emotions just to come completely over us, just making sure that we're like prepared, so our emotions don't like completely move us one way or another.
Yeah, exactly. I am ready. I think another thing is, for me at least, with this transition, it always came a lot of frustration, because it kind of feels as if like you have to uproot everything that you were just in, all of the time and energy you spent to walk into something entirely new, and it kind of feels like it's like meaningless. You know what I mean? Like, what was that last season I went through for? And it's kind of like in school, how you'll have like a math class and you spend that year focusing on that math class, put a lot of time and energy to get that good grade, just to go into next year and have to learn a whole new level of it. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, what was all that for? Like, you know what I mean? I have to be introduced to this new level, and like sometimes the height of that new level overshadow what you just learned in that last one, and it's very frustrating. And in life, I think it's the same, because for me, I dealt with a lot of frustration, feeling like I was going in cycles in my walk with God. Like, dang, I'm having to learn your grace again. Like, I thought I just learned your grace last year. I thought that's something I already, you know what I mean? Like, I thought that's something I already checked. I thought that was something I already learned. But something that God had to reveal to me is that you're not going through cycles. You're just having to learn a higher level of the same lesson, because the depth of his grace, his love, his mercy, etc. is like, it's so great that it has to be revealed over time, and it also has to be revealed continuously. So you have to come to terms with the fact that you're not learning the same lesson. He's just revealing to you a deeper depth of it. And this is also something I had mentioned that I think it was in an EP or maybe a live, just about something God had been teaching me about, like being always a student. Like, no matter how old you are, no matter what season of your life that you're in, you're always a student, and there's always something new to learn. And sometimes, like I said, it's very frustrating because you can get caught up in that pride of, oh, yeah, I learned all this that last season, but you can't. I think you need to take from that season, obviously, what you need to take from it, but not sit in that and forget that there's also a lot more that you don't know. So along with the what I brought up earlier, it's also a balance with this of, okay, I learned a lot last season, and I need to take what I got from that, but also not allowing that to take too much from the fact that I need to learn more. There's always more to learn with new season. So yeah.
I like that. Like, understanding that there's levels. There's different depths to even different topics and sides of God's character that we may not have like understood in a previous season. So it can look like the same lesson, but it's something God wants us to like go deeper in.
Exactly.
So if we treat it like mundane and very practical and typical, like, oh, I've already known this before, then we'll never actually take deeper steps to get to the more God wants us to see in that, right? It's like, oh, well, like, I already understood grace or mercy or patience or long suffering, self-control, or joy. But like, there's still more to that inside of God and himself that he's trying to like reveal and put right in front of your face, that you always have to like be mindful of going into like a new season where you feel like, oh, I've already seen this before. You haven't seen this before.
You haven't.
Something Alexis says all the time. You haven't seen this before. So you have to make sure you have the right perspective when you're going into a season or a period of like transitioning, because like that can even blind all the things you're supposed to get from what you're about to go into. Right. So I like that a lot.
Yeah, I think you just gotta, in a way, just like kind of embrace your ignorance, you know what I mean, in the sense that you're not leaning too much on the knowledge you learned in the past season, you know. And also another thing that I felt like I've experienced through transition, learned through transition, is just the fact that our own desires is like one of the biggest hindrances to God's call on our lives. Because a lot of us have our own desires for where we want to go, the direction we want to take our life into. We have this like perfect idea of where we want to go. And ultimately, these are things that are opposing to God's will. And what the Bible has to say about desire is kind of touched on in James 1. It talks about how, in James 1:13, it talks about how God doesn't tempt anyway, but we're led away by our own desires. And then in verse 15, it goes on to say that once desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And then sin, when it's full grown, gives birth to death. So with this being said, it's laying out the fact that desire leads to sin, and then sin leads to death. So if you're ever at a point in your life where you're allowing yourself to be led by your own desires, it'll eventually lead to death. And this is talking about, it's not physical death, but spiritual death. But I think that is a common theme throughout the Bible. Like, anytime you're allowing yourself to be led by your own will, your own desires, your own pleasure, it's going to breed bad outcomes. But, and the issue with that is, with new seasons comes new desires. That's something that I had to learn. And you can get so content with the desires that you sacrificed last season that you forget about the ones that you're developing now. And it's like each season comes with new desires that you got to put on the cross. You know what I mean? So yeah, so it's with each season, there's new desires and desires that you can't allow yourself to follow. So that's something you always have to be watchful of when you're going through transition as well.
No, that's really good. And that was something, I guess, going more now into like the lessons that we've learned this past year, transitioning like to doing the podcast and everything like that. That's one thing that I've had to learn, is like, you know, putting my desires on the cross too. And dying to those, because sometimes those can get in the way of like the genuine love and like devotion that we have to God. And so that was one of the first things I was actually going to say in terms of like one of the lessons that I've learned like this past year is the fact that I need to fall in love with his heart, not his hand. And there was this post that I saw from this worship leader that had resurfaced. She had posted a while ago, and it said, when we find ourselves thinking more about what we want God to do through us than what he means to us, the lamp of first love has grown dim. And one thing that I've had to learn in terms of like this past year and all these desires, these accolades and success getting in the way is to make him my first love again. To make God my first love again.
Yeah.
Because, you know, just in the journey of like purpose and going through life, there's so many things that can catch your eye and maybe grab your attention and take your eyes and your devotion and your worship and all that you have off of God. And then you have to like come back and make sure you reorient yourself. Yeah. And that's one of the biggest things I've had to learn is like making him my first love again. So of course, like, you know, coming to God, you give your life to him, you have that moment, you have that experience, whatever that looks like for you, and you go into that honeymoon phase, right? Yeah. And it's just like any other relationship, even like, of course, it's always a mirror between, you know, marriage and like, you know, the love that God has for us. Yeah. So you have your honeymoon phase, and then of course, like you're walking with this person, right? You enjoy marriage. The first year is great. And then at some point, it's like things get kind of dull. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like if anyone's ever been in a relationship for a long period of time, things get kind of like, you have that period or season where it's like, it's more out of routine and obligation than it is genuine desire.
That's a bar.
Right? And so that's why people always say you should never stop dating your spouse. You should never stop dating who you're with. Why? Because you fell in love with this person. You fell in love with this person and you decided to stay with them and can continue a relationship with them and eventually marry them. Why? Because you got to know them. Yeah. That's what dating is. That's what that process looks like. You continue to get to know them. And so once you get married, you should never stop evolving yourself and then getting to know who you're with. And that's what keeps that fire. That's what keeps that like intimacy, because like you never stop like learning new sides and sides of this person and who they are and who they're becoming. So like, you continue to love them because you never stop getting to know them. And so sometimes like we can get, like we just mentioned earlier, like in these modes of like, oh, this is so mundane. Like I've seen it all before. How much more can there really be? How many lessons can God really take me through? But you have to understand the depth of who he is. There's so many sides of his character that he's not revealed yet, that he still wants to get to his children and where we're at right now. And that's what keeps that light, like that lamp of first love. To never stop being in awe of him and admiring who he is and his character, right? That's what keeps that fire, because, oh snap, like I never even knew this about God, right? I've never seen this side of him or who he is or this part. And that's what keeps us so infatuated with like just staying connected to him and everything that he does. And so that's one thing I've had to learn, and that process of like making him my first love again and never allowing myself to get mundane in my relationship with God.
Yeah, that reminds me of the scripture I was actually reading the other day in 1 Peter 2:2. It says, like newborn babies crave pure spiritual milk, so that by it you may grow up in your salvation, now that you have tasted that the Lord is good. So what came first was you tasting that the Lord was good to create that desire to crave the pure spiritual milk and the growth. But I think sometimes we can forget what it felt like, and we can forget, like you were talking about, like we can forget the love that gave us the inclination to want to pursue him in the first place. So I thought that was good. That's something you have to continually like remind yourself of. That's a bar.
Sure.
I think one thing that I've kind of learned over the past year is that obedience is in the attempt. Anyone who plays in these sports understands the importance of repetition. Let's just say basketball, right? So with basketball, the more you shoot the ball, the better the accuracy it gets. So it's not necessarily about, in your relationship with God, it's not necessarily about the accuracy being perfect at first. It's just about the fact that if you're putting up the shot, and that's where the obedience lies. And that's just another way of saying, and this is something we touched on before, is that God isn't seeking perfection, but availability. And this is one of those things that God has been kind of re-emphasizing to me and gave me kind of new language for, just in the sense that like, it's in the repetition. So you might slip up, you might miss a shot here and there, but like as long as you're continuing to put up the shot, that's where the obedience lies, is in continuing to pursue him. And like, you know, you might slip up here, you might fall there, but as long as you're continuing to put up the shot, like that's where the importance is. So yeah, obedience is in the attempt and not necessarily the accuracy.
That's good. I like that a lot. Obedience is in the attempt. That's a bar. And then another one for me that I had heard in a Bible study I was at not too long ago, well, a few months ago, and it stuck with me, and it kind of like really convicted me and highlighted, I guess, an area I need to work on. But it was the fact that a lot of us want to spend eternity with God. We just don't want to spend time with him. A lot of us want to spend eternity with God. We just don't want to spend time with him. And we love God enough for heaven, just not enough to give him our life here on earth. And what I've missed and what I've not been intentional about is quality time with God, right? And it just sounds so simple, but just like intentional quality time. Because actually, I don't think I've mentioned this before, but you can. So, for example, you can be family with people you're not friends with. So, one thing I've had to learn, even like right now with living with my parents, like the past 6 months, is the fact that like we were in the same house, living in the same living quarters, using the same kitchen, dining room, living room. But like at some point I realized, dang, like we don't ever speak to each other. I don't ever actually spend time with them. But there was this misconception that my proximity with them produced some type of intimacy. So since we were in the same space, since we were close,
Right.
in some vicinity, I felt like, well, that's enough that I actually knew them. And so sometimes we can get in this mode or in these seasons of like, okay, like, well, since I've been attending my youth group regularly,
Right.
since I've been looking at these live pretty consistently, that I've been at church, you know what I mean, pretty occasionally,
Right.
on and off, that like my proximity produce some type of intimacy, and that's not the case, because you have to have intentional quality time. Like it's a relationship,
Right.
so it's just like it's a relationship. So just because you think you're around God doesn't mean you actually know him.
That's a bar.
So our relationship with God can sometimes like be reduced to a love that comes out of obligation rather than pure desire, and that's what happens, because it's like, okay, I did this, I checked this box, I did all of that, but like how much time are you actually spending with him? That quality time will then produce that like genuine desire, right? That will make him your first love again. So yeah, I think I didn't even realize that. It's like, yeah, I say I love God, but like, dude, I don't even spend time with him. And that can be just like so overlooked. It's just like, okay, I love him enough for heaven. Like, okay, that's going to be amazing. That's going to be great. But like here on earth, like I'd rather just do my thing in my own time, with my own plan,
Right.
in my own purpose or whatever. And things of the world can just get in the way. Like your everyday, it's just like, dang, that one guy, I don't know if you've seen that one guy on TikTok. He'll be doing like the street interviews and he'll be like, football or Black History Month.
Yeah, I've seen it.
And I think, I don't know, like that's the same with us. Right? Like your career or time with God. Right? That relationship or quality time with him. From social media or a prayer closet. Which one? You know what I mean? Yeah. And so like it's just like in the everyday of like spending quality time with him, because there's like can get so many things that like we just desire and we put him just on the back seat.
Right, exactly.
When he should, be obviously coordinating everything. Right. But yeah, that's another thing for me.
That's a bar.
But do you have another one?
No, I think that was really one of the biggest lessons I've been.
That's biggest one for you. So then one of the next ones that I had that I've really been sitting on lately is the fact that to know God, to know him is the highest call of every human being. It's to know him, right? It's not about like the accolades, the performances, the achievements. how many souls you've led, people we've discipled, communities we've transformed. You know, all that's important. But yeah, and it comes down to how close am I to him, and how much of an integral part has he played, like, in my life, and in my priority, and in my devotion, right? And it says in Philippians 3:7-8, but whatever were gains to me, I now consider them loss for the sake of Christ. What is more, I consider everything a loss because of the surpassing worth of knowing Christ, Jesus my Lord, for whose sake I have lost all things. I consider them garbage, that I may gain Christ. And I know I've probably definitely mentioned that a few times, but that's been like my meditation and my favorite verse in scripture since I've really come across it. I think about like 3-4 months ago is the fact that I consider everything a loss. I consider it all garbage that I may gain Christ, right? For the surpassing worth of knowing him. It's to know him. That's it. That is our highest potential. That is our greatest call here on earth, is like to be in relationship with him, right? I feel like that's kind of ironically like a theme that we keep going back to with these lessons, is just like knowing him. And it sounds just so minuscule and small, but like to really have experiences with him and allow him to be our first love and best friend along with Father, you know? And so sometimes we can just get it in the way. Like you haven't, no one will ever reach their highest potential outside of God and who he is, and knowing his character for who, you know, and knowing his character for all of this.
Right.
And being intentional about like going into the depths of God. Mm-hmm. You know, there's people that like, dang, I can't remember, there's a parable that we'll have to speak on one day, but like there's depths to this, right? There's different people who want different levels of God. It's like, how much of him do you want? Some people just want, you know, to be a fan.
Yeah.
Right? There's some people who are like the multitudes in the crowd. There's some people who are the 12, and then you have the 3. Like how close do you really want to be to him while you're here? And so it's just like the highest call is for us to know him as much as we can, and allowing us to just be completely obedient to what he has for us. So yeah, that's one of the biggest things that I had learned this past year, doing, you know, the podcast, and like obviously seeing the success that it's had, and get all that getting in the way and taking the throne. It's just like to know him. Everything else it's nothing.
Pointless.
It's nothing. But yeah. But you sure you ain't have anything else? 1 year, 12 months, 52 weeks.
It has been 12 months.
52
bro.
weeks on the charts, number 1 in their hearts. You heard?
Who said that?
I don't know, Drake.
Drake. But I think that I don't think I have anything else. I think I said what needed to be said. You know what I'm saying?
No, I got you. So, but anything else regarding transition? This will be your closing remark. Just like your ending thing.
Yeah, I just say one of the main things for me with transition, and the main takeaway I want people to get, is just like, don't be afraid of your ignorance. Don't be afraid of what you don't know about God and what you don't know about your future, and embrace that, and seek out and desire to want to learn more, and don't be afraid of what you don't know. So yeah.
No, yeah. And then now that I'm thinking about it, of course, like, title of this one's Growing Pains. And this is a thought that came to me. I was like in the bathroom. I don't know why. But I forgot to add, is the fact that if you've ever had a growth spurt before, or you ever, you know, going through like your adolescence and you start to grow like in height, in stature, there was always pain associated with it. Always. You know what I mean? Like when you start to grow, you're getting taller. You usually feel it in your knees too. Them days was crazy.
That's weird.
There always pain associated with growth. And it can be something, it can be pain that's uncomfortable, but it's leading you to get to another level. It's building you and your character, and really for where you're going to go. And so growing pains. So don't take like the sign of like some type of like struggle you may be going through, or something that you may be wrestling with in your character or your esteem or how you talk and or like the refinement of God, what God's doing, and like even like who you hang around with or with your old habits. Don't allow like the pain and the suffering and that to like remove your participation from it.
Right.
Because all it is growing pains. What you're experiencing, like especially usually happens during a time of transition when things start to get cut and a refinement starts to happen. It's because it's the warning that it's time for you to prepare for what's to come, right? So it's just growing pains. Accept it and walk through it. It's the refinement process. That's all a part of it, and that's what this last 12 months has really been for me. Doing the podcast, it's like growing pains, like like transitioning, going from glory to glory, like level to level, in obedience, in leadership, in communication. And what I have to do, it's just been pain, right? But really, it's just refinement. Another word for refinement. But through this pain, it was always growing me, even though I didn't necessarily see the results. You know, like whenever like you were growing or whatever, you ain't really always see it all in the moment, right? You're in this pain, you're like, dang. But you look up a couple weeks later, it's a month, and you're like, dang, I can't fit these shoes no more. This shirt don't fit me like it used to.
These jeans.
Mama, I need some new jeans.
Yeah,
we got to go to the store. I need some new jeans. And that's another thing with growth too. That's another thing with transition. You start outgrowing things. So you're trying to step into the future with shoes you can't even fit no more. You can't even fit no more. Even your attire has to change. There's some things that you've literally outgrown. And that's what you have to grieve.
Yep.
Turn like coming full circle back to the top of this. That's what you have to grieve. It's everything you've outgrown, right? From the pain and refinement that you've had to go through to get you to where you're at. Growing pains.
Growing pains.
Yep.
That's fire.
Accept it. Accept it.
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
What Paul say? I am ready.
I'm ready. No, but yeah, look, y'all. We love y'all. We appreciate everyone. Much love always. And I mean always. It's only this is just year one.
For real.
We got a few more to go. I'm excited for everything that's about to happen and take place. It's been a journey. I'm proud of us.
I'm proud of us too, bro.
I'm proud of us. And I'm just happy. So yeah, y'all know what it is. Stay you.
Stay real.
And stay humble. We'll catch y'all next week. Much love.